Hello, Spooniverse. A lot of folks have been sending me messages about wanting to hear about freight train stories, about being a modern hobo. There's been a lot of comments about wanting to hear some of those stories, and even some folks who have been to some of our storytelling events and some of the storytelling nights that have heard some of the stories, and they want me to upload some of the stories that they had heard at some of those nights, such as the couch story, or the Chippendales quarantine area story, or things like that. But there's something that I really, really want to get crystal clear, and I feel like it's really important for me to say before I do anything of the sort. Number one, it's illegal. You can go to jail. Number two, it's dangerous. Besides the fact that you could literally get locked into a boxcar, or you could lose a limb, or that you have to be in some of the worst parts of some of the biggest cities in America, or that you're literally homeless, it's just really dangerous. You can get hurt. Which leads me to number three, which is that this is not the 1920s. And the 1920s hobo culture may not be what you thought it was. A lot of folks in America take the idea of the Depression-era hobo or the Dust Bowl-era hobo and romanticize it because of a lot of the films and movies that we've seen growing up and as kids. There's a lot of ideas that it's kind of a romantic thing. You get to see a lot of scenery. It's a carefree lifestyle. You get to meet new people and do this and that. But the truth of the matter is that the hobos in the 20s and the 30s were there because they couldn't find jobs. To romanticize all of this in a struggling artist sort of way is a little silly. It sucks to be a struggling artist, too. It's estimated that nearly 2 million men during the Dust Bowl became hobos. They would face starvation and a lack of work and prosecution from the railroad bulls or the railroad police, who would literally beat them and tear apart their camps. There was camaraderie. They would gather together and make something that's called mulligan stew, which pretty much that's when all the travelers and hobos together would take what food they had in their backpacks, whether it be vegetables or canned goods, and stick it all in one pot, and everybody in the hobo jungle or the hobo camp would share the mulligan stew. Very often hobos would knock on the back doors of restaurants looking for work, or on farmhouses, and try to, find different jobs that they can do for a place to stay or for a meal. And there also became a hobo language, where if they did find a good place where they could stop and find a meal, they would mark, say, the fence post or the doorway, or even underneath bridges and other markings, freight hop-out spots, for example, different symbols. There's actually a code. Certain things like religious talk will get you food, or you can work here for a meal, or you can sleep in the barn. I actually have a tattoo here that means a kind lady lives here. And nowadays, travelers still have that code, except the symbols are slightly different. There are symbols like, you can go dumpster diving here, or here's a good spot to steal Wi-Fi. And so today, those things still kind of exist, except the world is completely different. Being a traveler is a hard thing. You're literally homeless. And so you can romanticize it all you want, but the truth is, you're homeless. And I used to have a really, really great time seeing a lot of really great scenery. I saw a lot of really great things, and I met so many awesome people. But I did a lot of stuff that was really not so comfortable. I used to sleep in the back. I would find places that were like for sale, and I would sleep on the back porches of those places sometimes when it was raining, and I would set my clock and my alarm so I would be up before the sun rose, out of sight, out of mind. I would camp, right at the edge of a farmer's field, hoping nobody would find me. Or in some cities, they didn't want you to be in any kind of bushes or trees or things like that when you're homeless, and you would be stuck sleeping in the doorways with people passing by, vulnerable, knowing that you could get hurt at any moment, even a little scared to go sleep. So I traveled around and I did a little street music, but not every city is welcoming to street music. And so sometimes I would end up having to find some odd jobs, or in some really terrible cases, I had to suck it up and go fly a cardboard sign on the street corner. And it's a really humbling experience. I learned a lot of things to keep me safe. I learned to wear baggy clothing so that folks couldn't tell if I was a man or a woman from a distance. I also learned to, be careful about who I was traveling with. Very often you see travelers out and about in cities today. Folks are traveling in groups, and that's for safety's sake. It's also why very often you see travelers with dogs. It's a safety issue. Most of the train yards in the United States are in some of the worst neighborhoods, and so you have to be careful. People tend to stand up and help you out. And I learned traveling that a lot of folks who are down and out themselves are really quick to help. And a lot of that has to do with empathy. Folks seem to be more empathetic when they've been through hardships on their own because they can relate. I'm blessed and lucky enough to say that I was homeless by choice, because nowadays there's a lot of people on the street who are not homeless by choice and don't have much of a choice. A lot of folks ask about these quilts that I have in back of me, and the truth is that I rescue them from Goodwill when they go and sell the stuff they're going to discard by the pound. I pick up the blankets and the quilts that seem like they could still get some life out of them, give them a wash, and give them to folks who need them. And especially this time of year, as it's getting colder, it's really important to look out for those, our neighbors, who are less fortunate than us. Every single year, folks in the United States die on the street from exposure, and it's really important for us to take note. I remember when I was a kid, and I went to Kansas City with my family. It was the very first time I had actually seen somebody who was visibly homeless, because where I grew up in Wichita, that wasn't really something that you saw a lot. And I saw this man who was definitely you would consider destitute. And I remember feeling so shocked. I remember feeling like I needed to help this person. I didn't understand why people were walking by and they weren't wanting to help this person. He obviously needed somebody to care for him and help him. And I was just really confused. I do feel like it's important for us to kind of reach back into our inner child and embrace those emotions, because it's important for us to, like children, care about the people next to us in even a childish way. We need to remember not to judge somebody's story by the chapter that we walked in on. I hope this video helps somebody, and I hope in the meantime y'all can just live vicariously through me. And thank you so much to all the YouTube members and Patreon supporters that we've had. We've had a lot of new ones recently. Really appreciate all the love and support. And hit the subscribe button, and thanks.